Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Hello out there. Once again, you are most welcome to the Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on Twitter, Scott McKay on YouTube, Real Scott McKay on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook at the Mountaintop Summit Facebook group. And of course, as always, at www.mountaintoppodcast.com. With me today is a friend of mine who I originally met a few years ago when we shared the stage at a conference together. She's actually been on this show before, and you guys just responded powerfully to the show we did together. It was on First Impressions. And Kim Seltzer, who is my guest, she and I have a great time laughing, cracking jokes together. And of course, she's a female human being, and who doesn't love to talk to friendly, personable female human beings? So you know what? She had me on her show a while back, and I decided to return the favor and have her back on this show. The topic du jour is one that I think is going to light a fire underneath a lot of people's butts. Might set their pants on fire, actually, come to think of it, which might not be the worst thing in the world. And that's how to talk to women like a man. So I want you to welcome with me from Los Angeles, California, Kim Seltzer. Kim, how's it going?
Hey, Scott. How are you? It's good to be back.
Yeah, it is. You know what? You're a good guest. And you know what part of the reason for that is?
Why?
You're just incredibly cool. But
oh, my God.
The other part is that you have a podcast of your own.
I do. Right. I do. And it was so awesome having you on, the Charisma Quotient.
I would have to agree.
Yeah,
it was
a good one. And it raised a lot of hairs, actually.
This I didn't hear about. Tell me more.
Yeah, I decided to save it for the show, but in a good way. Like, it really kind of made women think about, just how they're coming across and what men like. So I'm glad that we're now kind of flipping the switch and talking about how to talk to women like a man.
Well, it's good to have hair-raising experiences as long as they're adventurous and kind of the thrill-seeking genre, like a roller coaster. If it's like an impending head-on collision on an interstate with an 18-wheeler, maybe not so much. So you're talking about good hair-raising.
Good hair-raising. It was good. Well, I mean, some women got a little bit bent out of shape, I will say.
They wouldn't be our girlfriends anyway.
Exactly. But then there's a reason why they were single, and I think we hit a pain point, obviously. So, right. It's not necessarily bad to do that because, I always say that change doesn't happen when you're comfortable. Change usually happens in discomfort. So anytime something is uncomfortable, that means it's probably something that you need to take a look at.
What I always say is change doesn't happen when you're comfortable. Boy, does big money happen when you're feeling nice and cozy.
Yeah, well put. Exactly.
We don't bother with chump chains around here. We don't want to be comfortable. But you know what's funny is, or curious at least, I don't know if it's exactly humorous. Actually, it's pretty blasted depressing. But a lot of guys are really afraid when they write an online profile, even when they get on an app like Tinder or Bumble, to offend the women who really just don't like men to begin with. And I always tell those guys, why are you walking on eggshells with those women? You don't even want to date them anyway. Who gives a rip what they say to you, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, and what's interesting is I hear the same thing from women. And that's what's so funny about it, like, having the women's perspective and the man's perspective is that I feel like we're all the same. We're all craving the same things and we all fear a lot of the same things, but how things get manifested is sometimes different, right? And so, I think that, from a woman's standpoint, and what I hear is that women are scared that they're going to attract like unavailable men or narcissistic men or assholes or, the list goes on and on. But like you said, those aren't your people. And so all you can do, you can't change other people. All you can do is look at you and what are some things that you can do to attract something different. And that's all you can do. And that's the empowerment piece, actually.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are spending a lot of their time and energy trying not to offend people who are just flat out easily offended and looking for a reason to get offended.
Totally.
And you know what's really perhaps ironic about that is I think if you or I or any of the other guys listening, not that you're a guy, but you know what I mean, any of these people involved with this show right now, If we really were surly, mean, nasty people who were just offensive and cold-hearted snakes, all these people who were so easily offended, especially all these women, would leave us alone because they know we would lash back at them and it would hurt. So I have this little weird social theory, and it's kind of tied to, the Twitterverse too. People will really lash out and get nasty at people who are just sort of in disagreement with them, who they kind of see as under the surface rather kind of friendly and conciliatory, because they know those people won't lash out at them in return. So they can go whole hog at these people and just rip them a new one. And then maybe the person will apologize or say, oh, well, you know what? Thank you for your comment. And then what the person does is just rip into them some more. And I think it's built on this idea that, oh, if you're a little bit of a public figure, you should be held to a higher standard. And how dare you respond to me in kind if I rip you a new one? It's this really low end, low character outlook on things. And I don't think it's gender specific. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, and totally. And now I'm going to put my therapist hat on for just a second. But, usually people fall into, certain roles based on where they come from. Right. And so I find this to be true. Like people caught in that dynamic, usually there is a tie to things in their past where they had to fight for something or, they didn't receive the love, or they had to be in the victim mode or whatever it is. And so that they play that out in order to, gain the confidence, but it's a false sense of confidence, and that's the sad part. But we're not here to talk about that, are we? We're not.
Oh, I don't know. I think in a way this is kind of on point.
Okay. Because I think in order to talk about like how to talk to women, you have to look at where you come from. I mean, that to me is one of the biggest things that I like to do. I don't believe that there's like a cookie cutter approach, to everybody and everything. Because people ask me all the time, like I coach guys as well, and they'll be like, Kim, give me some lines. And I'm like,
oh, you get that too.
Do you hear that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give me some lines. What can I say? I'm going to memorize some lines. How can I approach that woman over there? I'm like, sorry, dude, I'm not going to give you the lines, but let's talk about, what you're feeling and what you're doing. I have this whole social engagement formula that I teach people and how to move conversation from, that head space where, people get in their heads to more heartfelt, personable, and more emotive ones, which really taps into, how women communicate. So yeah, it's crucial to look at, just the whole picture of people.
Let me guess. After you go through that whole spiel you just described so eloquently to me, the guy pauses after 10 minutes and goes, so when I meet a woman, what do I say to her? Got a line?
Yeah.
Right? Am I right?
Right,
yeah,
right. It's so true.
Well, we have two plates spinning here, which is fine. We can multitask. You're originally from the East Coast too, aren't you?
No, I'm from the Midwest. Let's not mistaken.
Oh, okay. So I have to handle you with kid gloves. You can't talk about three things at once. You don't have everybody at the dinner table at Thanksgiving interrupting each other, and it's actually a real cogent conversation between all 12 people at the same time.
Well, yeah, no, that happens too because I'm Jewish, so that's a whole other thing, right?
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, I can totally go there. I'm just not the East Coast Jew.
Yes, okay, that's the other mitigating factor. If you come from a Jewish family, an Italian family, or you're just from, the Mid-Atlantic corridor, you can talk over people and everybody's still completely friendly with each other. That was so exhausting to people. I found out everywhere else in the entire country. Like in Texas, they just don't do that.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. I just was there. You're so right.
Right. So my parents would come to town and, my wife and any extended family who was not named McKay were just exhausted having dinner with us. They were like, oh my God, you people, I got a headache. I got to take some Advil or something just to keep up with you people. But anyway, the two plates we do have spinning here are, first of all, you have things in your past as a man. We're talking to guys here, okay? So let's keep it real.
Yep.
Men and women do suffer from this, both of us. But men do have things in our past that flavor how we think about women and how we would expect women to respond to us to begin with. And as you know, Kim, women tend to respond to a man who's a leader because women like men who provide and protect and preside. Mm. And conversely, that's also why women can't stand to go out on a date with a guy who has no plans. Like, oh, what do you want to do? So when guys have a preconceived notion of how women are going to react to them, it tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Correct.
Now,
correct.
You got that plate spinning. The other plate we have spinning is guys are deathly afraid of female human beings. They're afraid of the rejection. They're afraid of angry feminists ripping them a new one just for being toxic, for existing as a man. And, you know, you have guys trying to agree with all the feminists and be an ally. And, you know, they're not getting any dates. They're just getting yelled at even harder. It's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. So both of those factors, I think, are actually related. I mean, okay, there's this way I'm viewing women based on how my past was constructed. I mean, that's the foundation on which the house was built.
Yep.
And because of that, the house tends to get built based on the lay of the foundation. So, no pun intended. And that foundation may not be getting laid at all. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So basically the house gets built on that. That shapes who you are. And then on top of that is this house that's built that says, you know, I just don't trust women. I may not even like women. I am bracing myself for the trouble women are going to bring to me in this life. And it absolutely, wow. I mean, at the holistic level, influences every nuance of how we talk to women, even how we sub-communicate everything to women non-verbally, right?
Yeah, exactly. There was this guy, just to kind of give you a story based on what you're just talking about. I do these wing girl sessions, right? So I go out with, people, both men and women, and, teach them how to flirt and helping them with their interactions and their body language, communication, all that. And this guy, the first thing that I do is always get a good history. I mean, I put my therapist hat on, and because I can't move forward until we know, your journey up until now. And it was exactly what you're talking about. I mean, he had this, kind of preconceived notion about, first of all, himself, that he grew up with a very domineering mom. And he never really had his voice, like he just kind of always did what women told him. I mean, it was just, he felt almost powerless. And so there's this like fear that was constantly with him. And what that looked like out in the field when he would try to approach women is, he would just hesitate, and he'd be that creepy guy in the corner just staring. And he wasn't creepy, but women didn't know that because he was hesitating so much. So he was in his head. He just had this like label for himself that, he wasn't powerful. Yeah.
And women are left thinking, why is this guy so scared of me? He must just have social anxiety or something, because hell, I'm just a woman. I'm not going to kill him. Why is he so scared of me? I've heard that from so many different women.
Oh my God.
Approach anxiety goes right over their head. They can't even believe it's a thing. They gasp when they hear about it.
Well, I think it's really funny because, coaching both men and women, I hear the same thing on both ends of the coin. Like, the men are fascinated that I coach women. They're like, what are you coaching women for? Like, we're the ones that have to approach you. Like, they think it's fascinating. And then women are dumbfounded that men are more fearful of them than we are of them. And like they can't get that because they're so scared. So here we are, we're all scared, right? So going back to the story with this guy, we were in Whole Foods, and of course, what did he want? He wanted a line. He saw this woman, she was gorgeous, and she was in the nut section. Okay, just bear with me. And he turns.
I'm thinking of the ShamWow guy. You're going to love my nuts.
Thank you. Right? Like, I have 1,000 things going through my head and what he could say and how he could approach. And he asked me point blank, Kim, what are some things I can say to her? I said, Paul, where are you right now? And he looks around. He goes, I'm in the nut section. I'm like, do you think there could be something you could say about the nuts? And he's like, oh, like he didn't even think, because he was so in his head. Right. And so he had a great, like, just very natural, and it wasn't a line. It was just using observation and being very authentic in the way he was, playing with the whole nut theme. And I don't even remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of the nuts. And they were off to the races, and she was great. And her body language was very responsive. And they had like literally a 20-minute conversation from there. And he was amazed. He's like, I can't believe that never happens to me. And like, that's what happens when you get out of your head and get out of that, like, label that you have for yourself. But it takes practice and it takes tools. It's not as easy as just like, oh, just do it.
I couldn't help but notice you seem so sane, yet here you are in the nut section. What's up with that?
Right.
It's something you practice
we could go on and on and on about it.
Right. But 100%. I mean, obviously I do the same thing. I take guys out in the field to meet women, and it isn't hitting on women. It isn't trying to get laid. It's simply being charming and making women feel comfortable in your presence and demonstrating masculinity, helping them feel safe and comfortable, blah, blah, blah. Having the confidence that a woman would want to talk to you inspires confidence in a woman, those sort of things. And you're absolutely right. Guys are thinking, oh God, what line should I remember from everything I've ever heard before? What line from Neil Strauss's The Game should I go up to these women and talk about? I mean, should I start with who lies more, men or women? I'm taking a survey. It's like, hey, here's an idea. Look around.
Right.
Be observant. Instead of fearing this conversation and getting all wadded up inside your head, like you said, go outward and look around, and you'll see a whole world, quite literally, open up to you of things to say, starting with the nut section. Are you a pistachio person, or are you more of a pecan kind of woman? It doesn't matter really what you say, as long as you're confident. She knows why you're talking to her. She knows you find her interesting. We had a few shows ago a conversation about this very topic. The more you own your truth and just tell her why you're talking to her, perhaps ironically to a lot of men, it actually goes better for you. It's like, I find you really interesting and I wanted to meet you. So here we are both buying nuts together. And she'll go, oh yeah, I'm getting me some pistachios and some walnuts. And the next thing you know, she's gorgeous and she's sexy, but she's a big dork and she just likes to laugh. And she's no more superhuman than you are. It's just she's merely human and mortal just like you. She just happens to be attractive and female. It's actually kind of nice to talk to women.
Yeah, we're pretty cool, actually. Like once you get to know us. Yeah. But you got to give us a chance. And here's the other thing. When in doubt, just say you're in doubt. I mean, like that vulnerability piece, like you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the like masterful line that Scott just had about the nuts. I mean, that was amazing, but like not everyone can, think like that. So even if it, like you said, even if it's not like the best, it doesn't matter because
who's this Scott guy with all the lines?
Yeah, exactly.
This third party
who raised hairs on Kim's podcast. No, it's the thing is that vulnerability piece we find charming. So even if you're like, you say you're like, you know what, I don't even have a line here. I just wanted to say hi. That's awesome. Like that's great because that's real. It's that authenticity and vulnerability that we find so charming. Like, we'd rather you do that than say some, line from, like you said, The Game or something that you rehearsed before, walking into the place.
Isn't that crazy? It's actually better just to kind of stumble through it a little bit, as long as you seem real doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned something about guys being afraid of the response they're going to get from women.
Yeah.
And 100% of the time, and there's guys listening to this who aren't going to like what I'm about to say, but it may set you free a little. It might represent a breakthrough. I've been doing this a long time, 14 years. And every time any man has ever come to me and said that women routinely treat him poorly, they're routinely rudely rejecting him, or they're mean to him, what he's doing is not making women feel safe and comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
He's either being very sexually pushy. He's trying to do the Kino escalation thing where he's trying to paw women up and touch them on the shoulder, and it just makes women recoil and go, ick. When a woman has a feeling that her security is about to be violated, that becomes absolutely job one for her to get that safety and security back. Women are safety, security seeking creatures, like a heat seeking missile. And if you represent part of the problem instead of the solution when it comes to a woman's safety and security, she may not be nice to you. Some women are still going to be friendly even through it all, bless their adorable hearts. Okay. But if a woman feels the need to kind of put you in your place or be mean to you in any way, shape, or form, I can guarantee you it's leadership. Now, you may be in a place where women are super stuck up. You may be in a place where women are sort of unfriendly. So be it. But I have been to 110 countries, and I've been to most major metro areas in the entire United States. And when I treat women with respect, keep things light and fun, help them play a little, bring a sense of humor in, and generally not try to get something off them, nearly 100% of the time, women are very sweet, kind, and just rise up to meet you in conversation.
It's so true. And actually, that security and safety can be both sides of the spectrum, if you think about it. Because I've seen guys really aggressive or, like interfering with the personal space in a way that doesn't feel safe, like more that aggression. And then the other side of the coin is actually when the guys hesitate and they're not providing safety with their confidence. And I know that sounds a little strange. Let me explain. Women will actually feel uncomfortable if you hesitate so much where we feel like we can overtake you or overpower you or over control you. Like women actually don't feel safe in that. And so that's why a lot of times women will throw out punches. They'll throw out tests to see if you can handle it. Right? And so Scott, when you were talking about how women will be stuck up or they'll have their role, right? And they'll be a little snarkety. They're actually kind of testing you sometimes. And also they're insecure. So they want to make sure that you can provide that safety zone with your confidence. I mean, a woman wants to feel provided and protected. And when we feel like we can overtake you, it doesn't feel safe to us. So I think you're spot on. And I think it's like the pendulum. It can be both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think another angle on that deserves some mention here is, remember, women are following your lead, which means they're picking up on your emotions and they're going to start feeling what you're leading them to feel. So if you're scared stiffless, and you're afraid and you're tentative and you're confused and you're socially awkward, she's going to start feeling those same emotions. And none of those emotions feel good.
That is so true. Yes. Yeah. And that was the other tip that I was going to give as well, is that we really respond to emotions, both negative and positive. So when we feel you, it's not what you know, it's how we feel around you. And that's the big distinction that gets guys kind of tripped up, because they'll go for the little lines and the facts, and then they'll start doing like topical conversations, and then there's no connection. Right. And so we feel connected to you as men when there is an emotional response, when there's a pull, when there's that personal kind of pull that says, wow, like I really like him. It taps into that part of our brain that's way bigger, that emotional part, than men. And so if you can tap into that is when we feel really connected.
Another component of that big picture you're talking about in terms of how women process attraction is, I think guys completely misunderstand that women aren't going to be attracted to anything logical. In other words, you can brag about your job and your boat and your Ferrari and your Yale education, and women aren't going to feel anything.
No.
They're just going to go, oh, okay, well, you're checking off some very logical boxes there. So you get these guys with the Yale education and the Ferrari going, I just lost this gorgeous woman I went out on a first date with to a guy who makes $20,000 a year and didn't graduate high school. What happened there? Mm-hmm. Well, you hit the nail on the proverbial head. It was all about how he made her feel. It was all about the connection. And connection, as we've talked about on this show, is at a premium nowadays. People are very superficial. Apps are contributing to that becoming even more of an epidemic, this superficiality. But somehow when you actually meet someone in real life and you realize this person's one of you and you're one of them at the human level, then that idea of, hey, we're humans, let's connect, is augmented by, hey, she's female, I'm male. We're starting to feel some sexual polarity there. I think people are trying to put the proverbial cart before the horse there and trying to make someone feel sexual towards you before they even know whether they like you or not. And of course, those are two legs of a three-legged stool. Do I like this conversation we're having? And do I feel your female energy if I'm a male and vice versa? Do I feel this polarity? If you have those two factors going for you, you can ask her out and she'll probably say yes. Now, the third leg of the stool would be, are you both available? But, people cheat on each other all the time. So the third leg of the stool is probably negotiable. But hey, it makes for a much better mental picture if we have a three-legged stool,
Yeah, right. But no, you know what? You're touching about something I was thinking about as well. In that I think, and both men and women do this, by the way, is that so many people are trying to predict or assume, what the other person is doing, if they're available, if, it's like they're getting ahead of the interaction rather than really focusing on the here and now and connecting with the person and worrying about that later. And that's the other thing about approach, is that if you are so worried about all these things that a woman is and what she could be doing, or if she's going to, if, that if is going to stop you every single time. And that's the hesitation. And then that, kind of rabbit hole begins that you and I were talking about. So I always tell people, and this is something, this is universal. You're right. Dating is getting more complicated. We're dating later in life. There's more singles over 40 than ever before. And so what happens as we move along the continuum is that we've had stuff happen to us. So we're so worried about replicating things from the past. That's the fear factor. And then we're also too busy predicting the future that everyone's losing the presence. And so when you focus on being present and really like working on that connection and the way that you're making a woman feel, that's when the magic begins. All that other stuff you can worry about later. But I find that this is what I'm really, working on with a lot of people these days. We're going a mile a minute, and just to slow down and really focus on that.
Yeah, what I like about what you were talking about, Kim, is this whole idea of really complicating your intentions.
Yeah.
I mean, just tell her what's on your mind. Tell her you find her attractive. You'd like to ask her out, find out whether she's got a boyfriend or not, have this conversation with her. I mean, if you want something tactical there, I always try to tease women a little bit, that must drive your boyfriend nuts when you do that. And then she'll go, oh, I didn't have a boyfriend,
That's good. Hey, Scott, that's a good line.
But, you want a little tactical candy thrown at the parade. There you go. But, really, and I mean literally, really, that authenticity is at such a premium nowadays that it's like a breath of fresh air to everybody, men and women. When someone just basically talks about who the hell they are, is open with it, and what their intentions are and what they want, and women have talked like this forever. I want a man who goes after what he wants. And then the Me Too movement comes out and guys are like, what in the world do women mean by that? I can't just go after what I want because, I want to pull her pants down and, have at her. And I can't just go do that. It's like, well, you know what? Not yet. You know what I mean? It's okay to let her know that's what you're interested in. And she knows that from the minute you show interest in her, but there's a dance that has to be danced. And, you have to build safety and security and let this woman know that you're interested in her at a more holistic level. And then she opens up to you because that's how this thing works. And yet on the subject of talking to women like a man, which is what we're all about here today, men somehow think that if they talk to women like a man, they're going to get scared and run away. Yet, heterosexual women are turned on by men, so you may as well talk like a man. But you know what I see, Kim? I see men trying to mirror women and talk like women and do what women do, thinking, okay, well, this is what I was taught to do. And, like, for example, a job interview is mirror their body language and mirror how they say and talk and how they articulate. So you have guys like with high pitched giggles trying to attract women.
Oh, God.
And have you ever seen this before? You know what I'm talking about.
I do. Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying. And I see this out in the field too, is that women, like, they're not showing the signals that they're approachable, right? It's in their body language. It's the way that they're even like moving through a place, all of those things. And then men aren't approaching women in fear of ... right? Fill in the blanks. So nobody is approaching anybody, right? And so this approachability factor has gone way down, both for men and women, and both sexes have responsibility in approachability. I truly believe that. It's not just the man's job. I mean, we can have a whole show on just like what women should be doing to have men approach them. But you're right in that if you really just kind of let go of some of those fears and talk to a woman like you're a man, but also tapping into her as your authentic man. That's the distinction here. We're not saying do a bunch of lines and talk to women a bunch of, I'm going to be really sexist, a bunch of sports stats and business stuff. That doesn't make any kind of connection whatsoever. But if you can tap into her emotional side as a man, that's the power.
Do you know what's really curious? And I think I'm realizing it, at least making a cognition of it for the first time ever. I bet 99.9% of all men in the world couldn't care less when a woman makes a sexist remark. Like, yeah, okay, men like sports, yeah, all right, whatever. Has a guy ever called you out for saying something sexist?
No, that's so funny. I don't think yeah, you're right.
We don't give a rat's ass. It's like, yeah, okay, a bunch of men like cars. We like to burp and fart, and we don't listen, and we know it. I mean,
without generalizing, that's kind of true. But yeah, like
it's the safety security thing. We just don't feel threatened. It's like, yeah, whatever. Right now Netflix has this show out with Dave Chappelle called Sticks and Stones, which is pretty new at the time we're recording this. And people are absolutely losing their lunch offended with this show.
Why?
Oh, you haven't watched it yet?
No. What's it about?
Oh, he just basically tells it like it is. Emily and I were appalled and laughed at the same time. And at the end of the show, when the credits were rolling, I said to Emily, you realize 95% of the people watching this agree with everything he just said.
Yeah, right.
But they would dare not ever say it in public,
Yeah.
And he's talking about basically anything and everything that's not politically correct to talk about, but which is absolutely evident by human nature. People trying to tell you, I saw something probably late last week on the web where heterosexuality is no longer normal. You're an aberrant if you're heterosexual. And it's like, how is that even a thought process? This is how babies are born. Great. We're going to accept everybody of every orientation. That's cool. But to come back and say, I should have a choice not to be heterosexual after the entire LGBTQ lobby for years has said that this is about nature, not nurture. But now if you're heterosexual, we need you to turn gay because, heterosexuality is patriarchal, or something. It's some horrible thing being done to women, this heterosexuality thing. It's like, I'm absolutely nonplussed by that. So basically the entire Dave Chappelle show is him going on for about an hour and 5 minutes about everything like that's going on in the world. That just doesn't make sense, yet people are trying to make sense out of it. And everybody is just kind of walking on eggshells when they don't know whether or not whoever it is they're talking to is part of their quote unquote tribe or not yet. You know what I mean? And we've gotten so tribal. And I know that's a buzzword that's just started to hit, this tribalism in Western culture. But guys, y'all listening are going to have to realize that angry people who have the microphone are a minute percentage of the general population. Most women are sweet, adorable, and love those movie moments when a guy comes up to them and is friendly and respectful and acts normal. That is the component of pickup advice that I never saw written anywhere until I wrote it myself. Don't be weird and have a fuzzy hat. Be normal. Show this woman that you're actually not creepy and weird. You're a human being with normal sensibilities, and you will go a long way to making her feel safe and comfortable. Be charming, be interesting, but you don't have to be weird. You don't have to be non-standard. In fact, you do a lot better for yourself when you present as a pretty rational, reasonable human being. But one thing that you did say that I want to hark back to is that women do have a responsibility here. A lot of guys, because we want to be the hero, because we see ourselves as a provider, a protector, a leader, we are willing to take that responsibility on. And, a lot of guys are weaklings who are shirking responsibility and, playing the victim card. That's not very manly. Of course, we want to own our responsibility. We want to own our mistakes. And of course, we want to take full ownership of being a better man. But look, there's some women out there who just are aloof or not very nice or haven't learned the social skill to be approachable. And that's not on us. You're absolutely right about that.
Well, I think everything that you've been talking about has to really do with, fears, fears that have crept up in society, fears about things that we've dealt with in the past. And I think that we're actually in a state of recalibration. I have hope. I have hope for us. And I think that like the pendulum, sometimes in order to recalibrate, we kind of go to the other side as an extreme, but that's not okay too. I mean, with all the stuff that we're talking about. So it's like, how do we find the balance where we're not shut down, we're not guarded, but we're not, overbearing, overpowering, and using our power to harm people. So you're right. And just so you know, I'm trying with the women. I'm doing my best. I'm doing these flirt academies where I'm trying to teach women, how to be more approachable and flirtatious. But, 9 times out of 10, it isn't because they're aloof and bitchy and all that. It's actually because they're fearful too, and they're scared. So again, we're all living in this fear. But I think some of the tips that we gave here are really good. And it's just worrying about, what it is that you want, going after it, getting out of your head, being more vulnerable, not hesitating, tapping into that emotion. Okay. And I just want to say one last little hack when it comes to, talking and approaching women. And this is something that has to do with the other show that we were talking about, first impressions. And that is looking and feeling your best. A lot of times people roll their eyes and they're like, oh, this is superficial. And, if a woman doesn't like me for me, I don't have to change my clothes or my attitude. And it's just simply not true. And all the research backs that up. And if you think about it, this is something that's instant that could really make a difference in the way that women are viewing you and also how you feel about yourself. And so, yes, looking the part, having a great wardrobe, putting something on your body that you feel confident in, the women will perceive you differently. And that in turn will help you with your confidence in the way that you're going to interact with them. Image does matter. This is something that I harp on. I do virtual makeovers with, tons of people to really help them market themselves better. So that's actually, to me, almost the first step, really before you're going out or before you're going on a date, getting in that mindset of that confidence mindset, if you will, from putting on your, confident clothing or costume, if you will, like you can even think of it as your Superman costume. I don't care, it is a costume, and it will help you embody a different sense of you. And so when you kind of prepare yourself in your body and in your mind, you will actually, women are going to notice that there's a different energy from you. And I think that will also help you have the confidence to even approach her.
Yeah, I like the allusion to the Tony Robbins idea of walk around like you're wearing a cape,
Oh, does he say that? I didn't even know.
Yeah, that's an old Tony Robbins thing from his first set of cassette tapes, in 1980,
Oh my God.
You know what else comes to mind there is, again, guys tend to be oblivious to how the woman is feeling and trepidation she has. Women who are dressed better, women who have a nice dress on or, have put their makeup on, made up their face, done their hair before they leave, are often a lot easier to talk to than a woman who in her own mind sees herself as completely frumpy because she just went to the Walmart to grab a couple things,
Right. Yes.
Right. So she isn't feeling confident about having been approached. She's thinking to herself, you know what? Of all days, a guy decides to talk to me. He had to pick this one where I look absolutely just horrible. And of course, we as guys, we can see a hot woman in sweatpants and she looks just as hot to us, basically, if she would have worn a cute sundress,
Right. But she looks so much cuter in a sundress. You have to admit,
well, she does.
That's the point. And also there's a confidence with that. But no, you're right. It's the way we're marketing ourselves.
Right. And I agree 1,000% that a man will acknowledge that a woman does look indeed better when she's made up and has sundress on or whatever. But I think women greatly overestimate the importance of what she's wearing to our overall impression of her sexual fitness or how attractive we are to her.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, oh God, this is the worst. This is the most horrible thing that could ever have happened. And the guy's still approaching her. He still likes what he saw. He still found her interesting. He liked her body language. He liked her energy, and he wanted to talk to her anyway. And so the domino effect there, if you will, is the guy doesn't understand why she's not confident or why she's not being so personable, because what's going on in her head is a female driven thought of, oh my gosh, I look terrible. How can this guy possibly be talking to me? So it kind of goes both ways. How you look, how you feel about how you look and how you're presenting yourself, whether you believe you're accurately representing your personal style to the outside world or not, will have a profound effect on how you are in the truest sense of the word to the outside world.
100%. I mean, image matters. And going back to that first impression stage, you actually exemplified it perfectly, is that, people make judgments and assumptions based on two things: what you're wearing and the attitude you have. And that includes body language. And you can get past a lot of barriers, even if you're not as confident or you're not great with the lines, or, you're still kind of shy. If you look the part, she is going to kind of give you a chance. And then from there, things can grow. And there is a symbiotic relationship between the outer and the inner with your confidence. And, it's almost like act as if and you will become. And the more you put yourself out there, the more swagger you have in your clothes, the easier it will become.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. One last little note. You alluded to things changing socially and people being a little bit more wary of social interaction in general nowadays because of what we see on social media and in the media at large. I will stand by my claim that I think people still are looking for connection, but I will add, based on that very astute point you brought up, that men do well not only to think more about a woman's comfort level than ever before and maybe not be so aggressive and alpha up front, but you also don't want to be weak and you don't want to lose that wonderful masculine assertiveness. But perhaps if you mix in a little bit of warmth, a little bit of light-hearted conversation, a little bit of playfulness, that will make up for whatever deficit has been created by, all this talk and chatter on social media about how people are and their decreased expectations that people are going to be friendly to each other or even personable, and maybe help create those connections where people are really craving those connections.
It's so true. And it goes back to that vulnerability piece. I mean, I think we're all craving that connection and wanting the same thing. We're all having the fears, which is also a theme that we've been talking about today. And the more we can make light of it and laugh at ourselves and say, hey, we're human. I'll never forget when I was coaching somebody, a guy, it was a woman, and a guy approached us and it was a line. And I don't even remember what he said. I just remember it being like really inauthentic. And he was just trying, but you could tell he was a nice guy. But you know how he saved it? Right after he said that just horrific line, he's like, I'm sorry. You know what? I just wanted to come over and say hi. And I was trying to think of a way of just saying hello to you ladies. And it just didn't come out right. And that right there is what connected us to him. It wasn't
charming.
It was so charming, and it was real, and it was vulnerable, and we've all been there. And that was the guy that we wanted to talk to, not the line.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think that's fantastic. Taking oneself less seriously would be a wonderful topic of an entire podcast.
Yeah.
Because people are so inside their head and they're so worried about rejection and do people like me? What are they going to think of me? And I want everybody to approve of me. And, I felt disrespected by what happened. I mean, you know what? Shut up and stop worrying about what some Hollywood actor said about politics, and you're going to boycott an entire restaurant because the guy who's a 20% owner of the stock, did something you don't agree with. I mean, good grief, go have lunch. Stop worrying about this stuff. People just take themselves so seriously. And you know what? Both of us are specks in a pretty damn big universe. And all we have to do is talk. And you know what? Let me just save everybody listening the trouble. We're going to mess up. We're going to be human. And it isn't going to go perfectly. And I think starting off with that mindset of I don't even have to be perfect. And if I'm not perfect, I may be all the more charming to this woman I'm trying to talk to. I think that's the first step to taking oneself less seriously, and I think it's huge.
Yeah.
Kim, you know what? I want to point these guys to your website where they can download your style guide, which is outstanding. It's one of the things you're most known for is helping guys level up their style. So I want to send them to your website, which I've created a URL for as always, which is www.mountaintop.podcast.com/Kim, Kim, where they can get their hands virtually, of course, on your style guide. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I know secretly men really do want to know about this stuff, but it's not like they're going to be talking about it on a Sunday afternoon, together as a group collectively. But every time I'm shopping with a guy or I'm going out with them and helping them with their, confidence and body language, they're so grateful. And to be honest, I love you men because you're so open. Like you love, if there's something that works on your body and you know how to, wear something, you'll want to get 3 of them, and you're just more efficient and effective in the way that you want to approach clothing. And that's what this style guide is all about. It's a man's fashion manifesto. So I go over the 3 body types. I go over what clothes work for you, what clothes to stay away from based on your, body type. I also go into grooming tips and what women find sexy and things to think about when it comes to your first impression.
Fantastic. And you know what? I think before I went on my keto diet, I was probably all 3 body types. So that's good stuff.
No, you weren't, because you weren't you weren't taller.
Okay. And we love you women too, by the way, Kimberly. So yeah, you guys should go get a copy of Kim's Style Guide, regardless of what height you are or body type. And that's at www.mountaintoppodcast.com/Kim. Always a pleasure. These are such fun conversations with you, Kim. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with these guys. I think they got a whole lot out of it today. Fantastic.
Oh, thanks for having me, Scott, as always.
And guys, if you haven't been to www.mountaintoppodcast.com just yet, it's time to go visit. Something new for you. A lot of you guys have been getting in on my laser coaching program, which is where you can get an unlimited number of 20-minute sessions on the fly based on something that came up that you need to resolve. Get the input you need, get reassurance you need, get the motivation you need, go out, make it happen, then come back for another session. Some of you guys have expressed an interest in trying that out and seeing how it goes. So I am now offering one-off sessions of laser coaching so you can give it a try. You'll be able to find a button that lets you do that and put it to the test at www.mountaintoppodcast.com, along with show notes, pictures of our lovely guests, such as Kim Seltzer herself, and also full transcripts and even a YouTube version, along with a way to get in on my daily newsletter and to download some free reports that are just for you. It's all at www.mountaintoppodcast.com. And until the next episode, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for The Mountaintop Podcast.